Good morning, and I want to start by reiterating the thanks which were given by Haidar yesterday and by Ilan to our organizers for bringing us together. It's so important. There was a time when people used to flee Germany because of political repression, and this is a time when people come to Germany because political repression gives them no choice but to come here and meet here. So this is something you should be proud of. This is not my first time in Germany. I was here a few times as a child. And in about 1986, I visited with my school, I visited Berlin. At that time, Berlin was a divided city. And I remember we were taken to see the wall and to Checkpoint Charlie, and we went in the underground railway and passed through the stations which were blockaded, and you would see soldiers with machine guns. And we went to East Berlin and passed through the checkpoints with the mirrors above, and all this system which was so oppressive to the people who lived under it, because it was a system devised to keep people apart. I remember until now seeing the wall go down the middle of streets. One side of the street was still there. The houses were still there overlooking the wall. On the other side of the street, there were no more houses. They had been demolished, and there was the so-called no man's land in between. And my overall impression of this system was how permanent it was. And in 1986, it seemed to me and to all who witnessed it that this was a tragedy, a very unfortunate reality, that we would never see an end to it in our lives. Nobody talked about the end of this system at that time. And it was just about 3 years later, in November 1989, that the wall cracked and later collapsed. And so one thing we learned from the history of Germany is to expect the unexpected. And I think that we have to also expect the unexpected in Palestine. That a system of oppression that is so real and so harmful and so devastating to the lives of millions of people seems permanent, but is not. And it can be ended, and I think it will be ended. And we have to start with what our vision is for the end, I think. And this goes back to the theme of the conference. Separated in the past. Actually, I would like to make one correction. Separated in the present, not in the past. And together in the future. And that should be our vision, that Israelis and Palestinians can live together under conditions of full equality. This is the most important thing. A few years ago, in 2007, Ilan and I met in Madrid, and I know at least one other person in the room was in Madrid who I recognize. We were part of a conference that met to discuss the one-state solution. And one of the products, after a lot of discussion, was a statement called the One-State Declaration, which we issued not to say this is the final answer, but to say this is our idea, and we invite everyone to participate in discussing it, in building it, and amending it. And I think, though, that because we put a lot of effort into it, it remains for me a very economical statement of what our vision should be and the principles. And I want to just read a few sections of it because it's quite long, so I'm not going to read the whole thing. But you can find it online if you just put in Google the One State Declaration. And I believe I've seen it translated now. We have official translations in Arabic and Hebrew and Spanish. But I've also seen translations in French, and there may be one in German. I'm not sure, but on the internet you find everything. And I think it's not my phone.
Not mine.
No.
It's over there.
Okay. The preamble is important because we wanted to state the problem. And so we said, for decades, efforts to bring about a two-state solution in historic Palestine have failed to provide justice and peace for the Palestinian and Israeli Jewish peoples, or to offer a genuine process leading towards them. This is the point Ilan was making, that this so-called peace process has nothing to do with the reality. The two-state solution ignores the physical and political realities on the ground and presumes a false parity in power and moral claims between a colonized and occupied people on the one hand and a colonizing state and military occupier on the other. Now this is a very important point, because one of the distortions that has infected our discussions of Palestine is we talk about an Israeli-Palestinian conflict as if they are equals, as if it's just two groups of people and they can't get together. This is like talking about slavery in the United States as the black-white conflict. I want to be like Haidar and offend sensibilities here. Not offend them, but pay no attention to them, let's say. What about if we talk about German history as the German-Jewish conflict? We cannot do that. We cannot do that. It's a violation of the history and the memory to create an equation. So we have to recognize the power imbalance. So we concluded in our preamble that the two-state solution condemns, that it is built on the unjust premise that peace can be achieved by granting limited national rights to Palestinians living in areas occupied in 1967, that's to say the West Bank and Gaza Strip, or just pieces of the West Bank, because that's all Israel is willing to talk about, while denying the rights of Palestinians inside the 1948 borders, the Palestinian citizens of Israel, and those in the diaspora, the refugees. The two-state solution therefore condemns Palestinian citizens of Israel to permanent second-class status within their homeland in a racist state that denies their rights by enacting laws that privilege Jews constitutionally, legally, politically, socially, and culturally. And of course it denies the refugees their rights. So, what we put forward as a vision, and we took inspiration. Now there was some discussion earlier about comparisons. Comparisons are not only a negative thing, they're also a positive thing. We have to learn from them. We have to learn from examples of how other people have overcome or tried to overcome such conflicts. And I'm using the term conflict because you see how deeply entrenched this language is. But we took inspiration from the Freedom Charter in South Africa, from the Belfast Agreement in Northern Ireland, and from other universal principles, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is what we built our vision on. Not on something strange or unusual, but on the most common and fundamental human principles. So we stated, the historic land of Palestine belongs to all who live in it, and to those who were expelled or exiled from it since 1948, regardless of religion, ethnicity, national origin, or current citizenship status. You'll notice that this vision doesn't exclude anybody. It doesn't threaten Israelis in any way. On the contrary, it includes them. But on one condition, and that's contained in the second paragraph. Any system of government must be founded on the principle of equality in civil, political, social, and cultural rights for all citizens. Power must be exercised with rigorous impartiality on behalf of all people in the diversity of their identities. Now, this is not a strange thing. This second paragraph is taken almost verbatim from the Belfast Agreement, which the European Union and every government in Europe praised and spent billions of euros to support the peace process in Northern Ireland based on this principle. So we will not be called extremists or anti-Semites or whatever else they want to call us, because we advocate basic principles of democracy for Palestinians and Israelis. I don't care what they call me for saying that. And the remaining paragraphs deal with what it takes to get there, because you cannot just say, okay, now everybody is equal, when for 63 years you've had a system of oppression and ethnic cleansing and apartheid, an ongoing Nakba that continues to this day. So we talk about that there must be just redress for the devastating effects of decades of Zionist colonization in the pre- and post-state period, including the abrogation of all laws and ending all policies, practices, and systems of military and civil control that oppress and discriminate on the basis of ethnicity, religion, or national origin. Again, nothing unusual there. The most normal thing in the world in 2010. The recognition of the diverse character of the society, encompassing distinct religious, linguistic, and cultural traditions and national experiences. Now, I know recently that the Chancellor declared that multiculturalism has failed in Germany. We still want to give it a try in Palestine, if you don't mind. Somebody, not me, somebody wittier than me, said, but monoculturalism also failed in Germany, so what will they do now? I hope I'm not offending you too much.
It's only Mrs. Merkel's problem, it's not our problem. She has failed to integrate.
And the remaining clauses of the one-state declaration deal with the non-sectarian nature of the state, the right of return, transparent and non-discriminatory immigration policy, the recognition of the historic connections between communities inside the country and outside the country, which includes both Jewish and Arab diasporic communities, and the establishment of legal and institutional frameworks for justice, restitution, and reconciliation. So that was the one-state declaration, and I think it's important to start with a vision and say what we're for, and that's what I stand for, and that's what I believe in. But the other theme of the conference deals with obstacles. So we have to recognize that there are obstacles in front of this vision, which includes the present-day reality of a racist apartheid state currently in Israel. I want to give you a couple of examples from the news as it is today. Ilan, who's written the brilliant history of the ethnic cleansing of Palestine, and you can find his book at the back in about 7 languages, right? But I'm saying that because I also want to mention that you find my book too. Only in English though. But after the ethnic cleansing of Palestine in 1948, within the area which became Israel in 1948, 90% of the Palestinians were expelled. And many of them today, and their children and grandchildren, living in Gaza with Haidar in a giant prison. And